Nadia, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Joey, Tony, Don. This is lovely. I was just telling my lovely PR lady, Miss Iris over here, how I haven't been to Long Island in I don't know how many years. I'm embarrassed to say. But it was lovely coming out here. The train ride was a breeze. I wish the traffic in LA were that easy. But sadly it isn't. So thank you so much for having me here. And I really welcome the opportunity to talk about what's in store for the next chapter.
Yes, welcome, Nadia. This is
Nadia.
great. Awesome.
Also joining us, we have Don Sill
Yes, hello, everybody.
and Iris De Vita.
Yes.
Nice to see you. And Tony Walker, of course. Let's hear for Tony Walker.
Fresh on the
Welcome
ones and
aboard.
twos, making it all happen over there.
So Nadia, tell us a little bit about your background. What first inspired you to get into creative industries?
Yeah, so I when I was growing up as a young girl back in Spain, actually, my parents moved around a lot. They were kind of like a bunch of hippies in the 70s, trying to figure out where they wanted to settle down, and they have 5 kids, so it didn't work out in Manhattan in a 1-bedroom apartment in a walk-up brownstone. So we ended up living in Haiti for 5 years, and then we moved out to Spain. And when I was living in Spain, the only communication I had with the outer world and the English-speaking world was a large collection of VHS tapes and Betamax, if you can believe that back in the day.
Wow, old school.
Betamax deck, that was a heavy deck, almost like the 3/4-inch deck.
Yeah.
And so I would take pride in enjoying, just organizing all the videos, watching all these classic films like 39 Steps, like Notorious, all those Hitchcock movies.
Wow, yeah.
And so I just started falling in love with film. And I'm like, and I was about maybe 10 or 12, and I told my dad, I said, Papa, I want to be a film directress.
Nice.
And he was like, oh, really? He's like, well, first of all, I don't think there are any women directors out there. So second of all, he's like, I'm not Jewish and I don't have any contacts in the film business. And at the time I was like, oh, that I don't understand. I didn't even think it was like mean or cruel. I just thought to myself, what is he talking about?
Right.
Cut to,
why can't I?
Yeah, right? Cut to a couple of years later, there I am coming back to New York, starting at Washington Irving High School, right by Gramercy Park, which back in the day was rated one of the worst, most violent, what have you.
in the hood.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone in Gramercy Park would clutch their purses and lock their doors and everything. But yeah, I did 2 years there, and while I was there, I started taking classes at NYU, the School of Continuing Education. I took film production 1 and 2. My dad said, I'm only going to pay for 2 classes because that's what I can afford. And so I started really learning the trade early on. I got into the Future Filmmakers Workshop at Tisch School of the Arts, and they only took 12 kids from inner city public high schools out of the Bronx, out of Queens, out of Brooklyn. And so I was really fortunate to start to study at an early age the craft that I really want to learn, and not just learn video but film, because kids nowadays, I don't think they understand how hard it was to be
Back
able to...
in the day.
Yeah.
Just too easy.
It's too easy today.
And you had to really be selective. Yeah, and then you had to develop the film. That was another 30%
and that's expensive
of your
too.
budget.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So it wasn't easy, and I remember even when I went to Sarah Lawrence, I think it was just Peter Gabriel's daughter and Tom Petty, may he rest in peace, that, Anna and Andrea, they were the only ones producing and able to, develop film.
Right,
because no one else could afford. We were happy to do a Super VHS video. That's what we were doing. So that's kind of where it started, and I always wanted to do, meaningful films that had some kind of impact. Having a son who's a 17-year-old, I think it's so important with all that TikTok stuff and the YouTube, and I tell him, it's hard to get the real source of information, right? Like what's really factual. So for me, I always loved the documentary aspect, and, kind of like helping people see a different perspective, like more the educational side of it. And hey, it's my perspective. You got a perspective too. Let's hear them all. There's room for everyone here,
Exactly.
So that's kind of like where it came. And I fell into advertising and branding content kind of like by accident, but of course it's a great way to pay the bills, the mortgage,
Exactly. You got to pay
the lights on.
Right. You got to do the certain things to make the dough, and then other things for the art and the love of it. And I think it's good too when you have a 17-year-old. It keeps you in tuned with what's happening on the other generations and things that might go. You're not watching TikTok all the time. This kid, like the other day, my daughter said 6'7" and started crying. I didn't know what 6'7" was. 6'7".
I have no idea. I hear it all the time.
It's again. So it's good to be in tune with having the youth, but also to follow your dream and as a young girl, in Spain at the time watching
Yeah.
Hitchcock films to all of a sudden you're in NYU.
Yeah.
one of the
Oh
great
no,
movie
I
schools.
feel very, very blessed and very fortunate. I've been, always surrounded, just like, meeting Iris here through New York Women in Film and Television, shout
Right.
out to them too. And
Yes,
my
sir.
Women in Film in LA for having a sister partnership with them
all
too.
the directresses.
Because every little membership you can save on is always helpful these days. But yeah, I think it's all about connecting, community. We have to really unite on a local level. And just yesterday when we had the grand opening, I was talking to someone about. She's also a producer for the multicultural market as well. And Maylene was saying, I bet you rely a lot on Charles. I said, yeah, actually, he's my first testing focus groups. I always have, I have him watch something first, whether it's AI or combo of AI videos, because I know he has his finger on the pulse.
Right,
And he can tell me, oh, but Mom, that was back in the olden days. I'm like, baby, it's not called olden days. Number one. Number two. Okay, I'm not that old.
I was from a cool time.
Yeah, and I'm like, and for my job, I need to stay up on the technology and the latest and greatest anyway, because
Yes,
I get beef from my own folks,
Right.
from other creative directors. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. We need to find ways to work with this Gen Z and Alpha generation, which are our kids in essence. And a lot of them are opting not to go to college. They don't want to go to college. They have business plans. They know what they want. They walk into a job interview and they tell you, look, I want to be making 150 grand minimum. I don't want to work Fridays. I'm going to take a nap at some point. I'm not going to work overtime.
They go into the job and they're interviewing.
Right.
They're telling HR lady what they're.
Well, it's hard to get these kids to work these days, man. It's
Yeah,
like
they want everything.
they want everything for themselves.
But they're a lot smarter than I am. I mean, I have to say, you have to. We paid our dues so much, didn't we? Back in the, and
Yes.
especially as women, right? And anyone trying to break into this business is
Yep.
tough. But and you have to prove yourself, and do a lot of freebies. You always say this is the last job I'm doing for free, and then another one comes up.
Down that road.
It's so good. I can't pass up, even though it's a short film. And then you're sweating buckets, and you're working 24 hours, and you're like, why did I say yes to this? So. But then, you see the end product and you're like, okay, yeah, it was worth it. I put 20 more years of my life, but, it was worth it.
I love when you do a freebie and then you get notes back and you're like, really?
Yeah, right. They critique you. They critique you.
I know. They literally, they expect that they're paying you, as if, and then all of a sudden they want, can we not get you two to do the soundtrack? You're like, are you kidding me? What? You're on a beer budget, all right? And you're acting like you have champagne.
Champagne wallet, yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. But it's all good. I always tell people you got to roll with the punches in this business, and you always have to remain in the position of, expect the unexpected. And always be in a position of never being offended, right?
Right.
Because this is another thing we're dealing with a
going.
lot in this generation is people get offended for nothing.
Very quick.
And I tell them, go to New York for not even an hour and stand out on the corner of Times Square, right?
I know.
And you'll see how quickly you're going
Right.
to, and if you get offended then, well, I'm sorry, but, this is real life. And this is why I love public schools, too, because it really is a slice of real life,
Yes.
That's a great test to see if anyone can get offended. Stand on the corner of a Manhattan street for an hour, and then you pass the test.
Yeah, watch all those couples fighting out in the open. People even take a swing at each other, or avoid one, and it's just everything is out in the open. And it's just great. Look, living in LA, there's a lot of road rage, and you see a lot of accidents. On a day like yesterday, it was raining. Oh, my Lord. Most people wouldn't even go out. They wouldn't, because they know there's going to be a ton of accidents. First of all, the streets are going to be as oily, as slick as possible.
Because it never rains there.
Yeah, exactly. They don't ever slow down. They're still doing 120, thinking
crazy.
it's no problem, and then they go to break, and sure enough, they're eating 10 cars in a domino row.
That's crazy.
So most people don't even dare and venture to go out. But in LA, I mean, they're just okay, whatever. It's not like it's a blizzard. We still got to go to work. Life still goes on, and I think that's also another thing that toughens people up too. And in LA again, they're living in these bubbles in their cars, and then the anger comes out. It's even more shocking. Whereas in New York, it's just you're in the subway, you're riding with someone's armpit in your face. And what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? You're gonna tell them, did you put deodorant on today? You didn't time to
You just gotta
shower?
sit there and take it.
Or you take out a little oil perfume like I do discreetly, and you just rub it on your nose. And all of a sudden, breathe over here this way.
Little Vicks rub.
Yeah, there you go.
So you're the founder of both Creative Collective and Nadia Films, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So how did each of these ventures come to life, and what sets them apart?
Yes, well, so first it was Nadia Films, and that's basically an LLC. We're a small, independent, full-service production company. So we also are able to do the concepting and creative. So oftentimes we'll have small brands that come to us, and they've never had even a marketing plan, or they don't know where they want to go with their brand, right? And that's fine. That's totally acceptable and normal. We right now are bidding a nonprofit that helps folks recover from addiction, right?
Nice.
And they're just this morning I was going back and forth with them on an email about, well, look, maybe we don't want to do a full-length documentary. Maybe we just want to do a social media thing. I'm like, that's fine. That's actually what I suggested. If you go back to the emails dating back to June, I said, why don't you start off in baby steps? So this way you don't feel like your pocket is being depleted, especially for a nonprofit,
Right.
of a big chunk of money, and then you just kind of test and see how it goes. But social media is where it's at anyway. You know, like most big brands years ago now didn't even want to spend $250,000 or even $100,000
Right.
on a 30-second commercial because they know they can do it on social for a lot less. And even though it's not going to be the best, say, quality or value of film, it's something that eventually, even if you shoot on the red camera, you can always blow it up. And yes, if you want to submit it to film festival or you want to get it out there on some spot TV, you can do it. But for me, it was always, I want to be a one-stop shop for everything. And I want to be able to be scalable and flexible. Because what happens, a lot of ad agencies, traditional ones, which is what we're trying to bypass and kind of disrupt that, right, is that they have, like, you know, their usual staff. They have their usual creative team. And whether it's a car brand or it's a fast food brand or it's a beauty product, you're kind of stuck always with the same creative group, right?
Right.
And unless you're cutting them a huge check, which they used to back in the day, a retainer of I don't know how many millions just to have you on the record as the agency, right, for whatever market it is, whether it's English market or Latin market or African American market, they still have to then pay on top of that whatever they're going to, you know, commission you to do, whether it's a full, I don't know, branding campaign for, you know, Anheuser-Busch or for Corona, whatever it is, right? And so on top of that, they're having to pay that and the media buy. We tailor everything to what their needs are. So we can staff up and staff down as needed, which helps save on that time of staff, right? And even with the time of staff, I mean, they would inflate costs a lot. I would see it myself, and I'm like, no, this is not what I make an hour. I even tell the CEO, and they're like, I know, but this is our profit that we're getting. And by doing that, they end up losing clients long term because then the clients are also tightening their belts.
Because you want to be able to ebb and flow with the client.
Yes, there you go.
So now, are you seeing more bigger brands that approach you, or brands in general that approach you, wanting to push more towards social and less towards TV ads or anything like that? And it's like, hey, we just want a stripped down thing just for TikTok, and how do you adapt to that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, we get a lot of those requests. And what we always try to do is tell them, okay, what is the objective? What do you ultimately see, you know, your brand or this particular, say you're doing a promotion of something happening, you know, like we did a nail art salon for two young ladies that, you know, broke out on their own and wanted to have their own nail salon, and it was all non-toxic, and one was really into like nail art, the other one was into like doing foot facials, which I think anyone who runs or walks the streets of New York or anywhere should get a foot facial every day or every week if you can.
A foot facial?
A foot facial. Like a facial that, you know, women and men of course get as well, but on your actual feet with the steam.
So they'll like do the whole thing.
Oh my! Your feet feel like a baby's butt.
You probably feel amazing after that.
Oh, you do. You start your day and you're in the best mood ever.
Now
really?
Now I know what to get Joey.
Yeah, exactly.
Foot facial, guys. We'll get foot facials this weekend. Let's do it.
You don't have to put any polish if you don't want to.
No, I've never heard of that. That sounds amazing.
Shout out to two Gemini girls in LA. Exactly, out in Santa Monica. But yeah, so they didn't have a lot of budget for their job, but I managed to get 2 cameras. I had one director of photography and another camera assistant who handled the second camera that I upgraded to director of photography. So I always encourage people to go for their key positions, you know, and empower people to seek out what they really want, not just in assistant positions as well. So yeah, we were able to do that. I think it was like a day or two, a shoot, maybe a day and a half. And, you know, she got over 2,600 100 views already with one of them. Yeah, and I hired this other guy who normally does carpentry on film sets. He just threw his drone up, around Santa Monica, got some like monument like the pier and, some of the promenade, some of the, those key historic things that really identify immediately you're in Santa Monica. And, she did a mother's promotion. So those are smaller businesses that we can help out. But then we also have like a Paul Mitchell say that they're, doing the school for like training how to cut your hair, how to do a perm. And then they're doing it in multiple languages because they're sending them to Russia. They're sending them to, Germany. They're sending them to other countries and even Asia and Latin America. And so, there's when like my husband and I will step in together, who's also my business partner, and he's also editor and visual effects member, and we'll kind of divide and conquer, because it was 120 videos shot in like 1 week at Smashbox Studios, and then each video, is like at least 20 minutes long. So that's a long format to cut when you're used to normally just doing 30 seconds. And going back to your TikTok, when you're like looking at 10, even 5 or 5 second quick things, just like teasers, just to get you to like dip your foot in there and want to learn more about the brand. But yeah, we definitely live in a society where the attention span is real short.
You got to catch them right in the first 5 seconds.
And you can measure it.
Get open up when you're going down the stairs or something.
Yeah, and you can even measure now with the metadata how far along they went in a video.
Yes.
Before they clicked out.
And I got insulted the other night.
You did?
I got insulted. I never looked at the video insights on my videos.
What happened?
All my videos have like 120, 170, 180, whatever they are. And I just for the heck of it clicked on what is this video insights, and it showed me that people have an attention span of 3 seconds. They're watching so 180 people watch it for 3 seconds.
Wow.
So now I know the first 3 seconds.
The views.
The first 3 seconds, I gotta go. What can you do in 3 seconds, man?
Right.
So,
you either grab them or you don't. And that's why I tell folks too. The opening shot of anything video is so important to really capture your audience.
Opening.
Yeah, even more than the big bang at the end. Of course, if you're doing a branding spot, you want to have that call to action at least 2 or 3 times at the back end, just to give folks time to really register. And now the QR code is a lot easier. But even that, we have to make sure that it's a certain size because they're sitting on their couches. They're that far away from their TV. We had this long discussion with Spectrum the other day because they were starting to do that for the Latin market, so the Spanish-speaking market. I was like, look, this is not the right format because I'd already done it from the general market and they didn't believe me. And I'm like, I'm telling you, go test it and ask the experts. And sure enough, we had to redo all because they were too small. The old lady sitting on her couch, she's not even going to know what to do with that QR code. You don't want to miss out. Those are your consumers, right? Those are the people that hope they're going to be purchasing whatever it is you're selling. So we just like to tailor and remain flexible and scale. But we understand everyone has different needs, and sometimes you're up and sometimes you're down. Sometimes you're doing great with your sales, sometimes it's a little slow. So we work with that, like you said, ebb and flow with everyone.
And when dealing with social media, how important for you and your company and your clients is the trends, the trending things, like you see so many trends come and go with TikTok, what's happening now with the and I guess it all matters. I guess the target audience, are you going for a younger demo or whatever, that kind of thing? But is that something that you follow, or do you just go?
Oh, we absolutely do. I remember there was like a number of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, the Stanley Cups were huge. You remember? And there were all those folks getting caught on the side of the freeway or got pulled over and their trunks are packed with Stanley Cups that they were trying to like sell. Now we got the Labubus or Labu. My son is even into And I picked up one at a film festival in Houston. I didn't even know what a big deal it was, and then I went to check the price. I was like, wait, I'm sorry, did you say $65? And I can't even see what this little thing looks like. This first
you don't know until you get home.
You have to open it, but you get first pay the $100 or whatever it is with tax. I'm like, this is no. I mean, I prefer to go to those machines and try to play one of those things where they're just going to take your money.
Old school,
but those trends, I tell clients and brands, they come and go all the time. Take it with a grain of salt, but definitely follow those influencers and those TikTokers if you really want to get more people following your brand. Right. So let's say, for example, my husband, he does a lot of work with automobiles. I've worked with Toyota as well and GMC and Pontiac in the past, but he's really he does a lot of XR stuff, so that's extended reality, and that came about during COVID when clients didn't want to travel, they didn't want to go to film studios. We were actually working with CT that used to do the that did a couple of those, like very cool visual effects TV shows were popular. That I think Pedro Pascal was in a couple of the. It'll come to the Mandalorian and all that. Yeah, and CT also worked with Herbalife at the time because I was doing live events with them. So, but getting back to the cars, they don't even really care, honestly, if the influencer likes Honda or Acura or they're into like a Hyundai car. They just want to know that they're going to get all the millions of followers attention the moment they have this kid, and normally they're really young, on stage reading a script and say, "Oh, try out the new da-da-da-da-da," and that's it. We drop them in whatever background on those XR. Say they could be standing in Times Square and they're shooting down in Orange County somewhere, and the one of the directors is out in Toronto in Canada, and then the other client is in South Korea. Someone's everywhere, right? But that's the convenience nowadays of technology. I tell people, technology is wonderful. TikTok is a wonderful way to get messages out there, but it's also a double-edged sword too. And that once you put something out there, it's really hard to get it back.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to have like that strategic marketing thinking. You want to go with folks like our team. We have a couple of guys like Roy and Javier Zavala, and even another younger team member who worked for the Academy, and she used to do all the social media managing for them, and now she's working at another ad agency. But again, these all come on as freelancers when we need to hire them and whatnot. And she also knows all the trends that are happening too, and she'll put out her own videos just for her own brand too, and here she is working for multiple companies. So that I think is very important. But the moment you put something out, always remember that stays out there, and it's hard to pull it down.
Yeah, exactly.
And to remove it.
Sometimes I'm wondering, like, for a marketing perspective nowadays, is it, if you had like a budget, would it be smarter to put it like into TV, or like the Super Bowl? Let's say you go all in, the big one, right? The Super Bowl for the commercials too. Or do you stick with social media if you had to choose between the two? Like, which one do you think ultimately is better for a brand?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think at the end of the day, it's also going to depend on what your budget is, right? Because those Super Bowl ads, and that's a very good example. I'm glad you brought that up. Super Bowl ads tend to be the more costly ones. And it's not just because you're normally hiring celebrities, right? Because every year, we see more and more celebrities, right? Especially this year, right? They were very slow because in LA, I was saying earlier, the business has been slow, so they're all going to commercials. And that's where these celebrities are making their money, which makes it harder for the ones who aren't celebrities, right? That still live in a town that are hurting, whose families had to be separated. Like, I do a lot of non-union jobs as well as union, and not by choice, but because sometimes my clients come to me like, look, we don't want to sign with SAG or after, we want to just be able to, this is what I have, can you do me something, to help grow my brand? And we say, yeah, and we put everyone to work, but you know what, I honor the same rates they make as if when they were in the union, as if they were union jobs.
Oh, that's cool.
And at the expense of often me not getting paid as a director, or maybe just half my rate as a producer, even though I'm doing both functioning as both on set. And the same way, I'm my business partner, because we want to put those folks back to work and we want to help their families out.
That's awesome.
And that for us is really important. But to answer your question, I always tell them, like, what's your budget? Let's work first with that instead of doing the back and forth. And obviously social media is more accessible and it's more affordable. There's also incredible ways of measuring it. When you do spot TV now, sadly, like say with Spectrum TV or even with Roku back in the day, right? It's not as popular, but Spectrum came out with their own version of that too that didn't do too well. And I know because I was at the time working with an agency that had to pull them and push for the mobile instead. But you have to consider what that costs and if it's really reaching the demographic, like you mentioned earlier, your target audience. Because with those type of, when you already subscribe to Spectrum, they automatically are going to be sending it to all those areas where those subscribers are. So you might be in a little town somewhere in the Midwest, but it's going to the tri-state area here in New York as well, and all these other, as they're like, exactly, I'm trying to promote my mechanic shop out here in the Midwest. And it's one of these rich folks out here.
I've seen videos of like a pizza place. I'm like, wow, that looks awesome, And then you find out it's in Philadelphia. It's like
they really need to take the time, and sad because they make all this money on our subscriptions, right? I mean, subscriptions aren't cheap, and they just went up again.
Right.
Whether it's HBO or whether it's Disney Plus, or they're laughing all the way to the bank, and yet they're not really targeting for, let's say, in this particular case, like you're talking about, I really want to get my targeted audience. I really want to specifically, and so these are questions that I always ask, my team too. I'm like, you got to go back to those media companies that own those billboards, that own all those different, streaming services, and really challenge them to do the research and really hone in to that demographic specifically that you're looking for. Because, you don't want to, like, women are the ones that normally shop in the household. That's known. And it starts as young as in the early 20s. Because in the Latin market, even earlier than that, too, right? So they're doing the majority of the shopping. Oftentimes, they're even doing shopping in cash. So you want to catch those ladies watching shows, right, that they're actually able to be in front of the TV, that they're not caregiving for the kids or the grandma who lives with them.
Find the right time.
Or, out shopping. And, like, a lot of people don't like to shop online still, even though it's very popular. And malls have kind of become ghost towns now, many of them,
crazy,
sadly,
right?
after COVID. So a lot of people still enjoy shopping in person. But when you speak to their culture and you speak to key things about family unity within a culture, whether it's a Latin market or the Asian market, then that really, makes them sit up in their seat. Oh, and they're watching it on TV. Oh, these people got me. They understand me. They understand those little things, nuances, right? And I tell people those are very valuable things. And when you hire a creative team that knows those in and outs, of how much family matters, then, you're going to get them to, like, think about your brand the next time they're out there shopping, or even if they're browsing online on Black Friday or Cyber Monday, So, I tell people, if you want to go out with a bang, sure. But the problem with the Super Bowl ads, they only run for a certain amount of time, right?
Right, yeah.
So if you're going to do a branding spot, like, definitely take advantage of social media. And definitely have it run like the longevity that it can. It could be up there as long as you want it, to be. And so with the Super Bowls, it's those guys, they get out there. It's actually here in New York where they go to buy that media, and they have to go a year in advance, and they call it the upfronts, and it's like, it's like an auction. Who wants to pay the most amount? And the same for the Oscars. Same for the Golden Globes, that they sell those media buys at huge amount. I mean, just for a 30-second or even a 15-second. So you're lucky but it's normally, you always see the same brands, right? The Mercedes.
Right, the Coca-Cola.
The Geico, the
all the big
Coca-Cola.
guys.
You don't see the Dollar Tree.
At the 99-cent store. I couldn't believe when they shut the 99-cent store. So many people shop at the 99-cent store in LA too. I shopped at the 99-cent store a lot for birthday parties and whatnot.
Well, we want to congratulate you for opening up here in New York, and we wanted to know, like, what inspired you to come to New York and why now?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Joy. Well, this is my hometown, and I always tell people, they're like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from New York. They're like, really? I'm like, no, I'm from New York. And, I take pride in joy in that, because this is such a diverse city, and like we were saying earlier, it's a tough city, like the song goes, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, and I truly believe that. But I also believe in the kindness. And, when people say, oh, New Yorkers aren't kind, I'm like, oh, that's bullshit. Excuse me,
Okay.
But I'm like, we are kind. If you stop us, even though we're busy running in the street or rushing somewhere, because we're busy, we got people to see, things to do, we will still stop and give you direction.
Yeah.
And I've even done it to other fellow New Yorkers having not lived for a while, and all of a sudden things change, or this other place moved, and I'm like, oh, excuse me, am I getting on the right side of the whatever? And they're like, oh, yeah, no, and they'll take the time to. Whereas in other cities, well, first of all, you're not always on the street, you're in your car, right, like in LA,
right.
And they just don't really want. They think you're crazy. They roll your window up. Yeah. They get ready to go to the glove compartment. They
There's no place like New York.
No, there's no place like New York. Yeah,
and I in college in other states, and they can't wait to come home.
Yeah, and I really sincerely believe that this is where, I always come to check in again and see this. Is this the right thing I'm doing? Am I making the right, move? And my son also, this is his first time living in this city full time, and it's just been such a joy to see him immediately, just kind of like blend in, adapt, make so many friends, just like that, and he's an only child, and he spent most of his time in the bedroom during COVID lockdown. That's tough for a young man trying to become,
from the bedroom in California to New York City.
Right, and going through boyhood to manhood, right? Because I always sympathize with boys, because I'm like, and I'm a total boy mom in that respect. I mean, I love my girls, but, I know it's harder, it's different. But, he came in, and I'm like telling friends, like, he has more of a social life now than I do. And he's only been here for like 3 months. He's going to baby, like whatever, sweet 16s and birthday parties.
Yeah,
he did more birthday parties in 2 weekends than he did in 1 year in LA.
Wow.
If you can believe that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a whole different. So I'm really happy for him. He gets the New Yorkers. He already has a couple love interests. I'm embarrassed.
I don't want to go back.
Anything I do.
He said you're going to be going back and forth. He's not going to want. He's going to be like, Mom, you just go ahead without me.
And he also said, not for nothing. He said, Mom, that's literally the word he used. Not for nothing, Mom, but the teachers here in New York, they're way better than LA. and that speaks to public schools. Props to New York, New York Board of Education. So I'm really, and he came from LAUSD, which is the second largest public school in the United States. So that's, he's a tough judge, but he's an honest one too.
Yeah, that's great.
So what kind of clients here in New York are you hoping to attract? What kind of projects are you looking to work on?
Well, let from your mouth to the God's ears and Mother Nature, whoever you believe in, because we really wanted to rain, like make it rain, because it's, all these things cost money, as setting up an office, whether it's a small office, mobile, what have you, and you really want to attract as many good folks as you can.
Right.
And I think, we're at this point, we're open to anyone who wants to give us a chance, an opportunity. That's all we're asking for is a chance to prove what my team can do and how hard they work, and around the clock if need be. We have folks that are in the UK too, like some of my husband's friends that went to school with him at St. Martin's Art School in London, which is where Sade went, and Vivian Westwood and Alexander McQueen, and he had the good fortune of studying there, so he has some friends that still work with him. They all freelance too, and they help out with AI. We have folks, of course, out in LA. We have folks in the Midwest. We have, folks that are in other countries, in Italy and Spain. And, we like to give everyone an opportunity. So the same way we give our team members opportunities to be part of this, and we're open to anyone who wants to join the Creative Collective as well in any area that they want to. I always tell them, like, whatever you've been doing in advertising all these decades, we want you to tell us what you truly want to do now, because there is life after advertising. You can still go out and do what you really want to do, and be happy and passionate about it, because sometimes you're stuck doing copywriting and you might hate doing copywriting, and maybe all you wanted to do was just voiceover and get those big paychecks that voiceover talent gets, and those residuals, and so that's fine too. We have a creative director who Roy Pari, shout out to him, who wants to do voiceover, and he's totally bilingual, English and Spanish, has no accent. You'd never tell that he's originally from Argentina.
If you ever need another voiceover guy.
Oh, wow.
Do some voiceover.
Oh, come on. Okay, Don. You can do some good trailers.
In a world.
Yes. Yeah, that guy, I have to say, he did a couple of McDonald's spots for me back in the day, and he never once left his house in Malibu.
Really? That guy? Yeah.
He already had his whole studio set up. He was so smart. And he didn't even,
So he was ahead of the curve.
Oh, yeah, and he had the right microphones, the EQ. But you know what? He was making the bucks. He was making those big bucks.
He was the guy, the movie guy for a long time.
In a world where Arnold Schwarzenegger meets Sylvester Stallone.
Ooh, wow. I'm getting goosebumps. You ain't got nothing on Arnold Schwarzenegger there.
So how do you see the New York creative scene different from Los Angeles? Like, how do you see them?
I think, and I was talking about this just last night after the party, and I was cleaning up. It was like 2-3 a.m. and I was putting trays of food away, and I'm very hands-on with everything. Even if I'm a director producer, I say, if I can go get my own cup of coffee and I still have my full capabilities, I'm going to go do that versus having a PA do it. So I was cleaning up and I was talking to my business partner, Ron. I was like, so what did you like the most about the party? He's like, it's the people. He's like, the conversations. He's like, the conversations I had they're so different from LA. Yeah, right. He's like, and this is a British guy, mind you, but he's lived here for 31 plus years, right? And, he hasn't lost the British accent. I'll hand him that. But now it's coming in handy because he might do voiceover because of that British accent.
Yeah,
that can bring in a little extra paychecks here and there, right? Pay for a couple of bills maybe. But he was saying it's the conversations. He was like, people, they're so diverse.
Right.
We went from talking to, how he launched MTV Europe back in the day to, a book he was writing about ghosts, during COVID lockdown, one of 4 that he wrote. Then he was talking about the weather and how it's changing or getting colder and raining, whatever. But you talked about so many different subjects, whereas in LA, and I hate to say this, and I love my Angelinos, don't get me wrong, my son is technically one, born and raised there.
Right.
You're only talking about the business, the industry, most of the time. You go to any
Nothing
party.
personal, nothing like, yeah, I got you.
Right?
Yeah.
And the first thing they say, yo, Joey, what do you work at? Or what do you do? Or what, are you a DP? Are you an actor?
Yes.
And they're already sizing you up. They already want to know the type of car you drive,
Right.
where you live, right?
I always flip my old van on purpose. Especially when I'm buying furniture and they see me pull in. I'm not going to try to highball me. This poor guy.
Yes, that's good. I used to say I lived in a tiny apartment, and it was a studio in downtown LA before downtown LA got cleaned up. Believe it or not, back in the day, it was still pretty rough. And I used to have the SWAT team every day because I was literally by the Mexican consulate, and then I had social services. So they kind of boxed me in my apartment, and there were so many times I literally couldn't commute just a few blocks down to the TCW building because I was like, boxed in. I'm like, what can I do? I got helicopter. They're all like, they thought I was joking most of the time. But I'm like, no, this is real, and I'd send pictures. But this is how it is in LA, right? It's all about the business, and so they come over to my parties, and the first thing I get was those questions, right, one after the other. And so I'd anticipate. I said, like, before you start asking me where I'm from, what have you, I'm like, look, I live in a rundown apartment in downtown LA with rats running all over the place. I have a beaten up 2-door Honda Civic that doesn't have any AC, and I'm a producer, but sometimes I don't do anything. And al dolce far niente, as they say in Italian,
Right.
the sweet pleasure of not doing anything, and I would just throw them off.
Like, wow, you really are from New York.
They didn't have a comeback right to that. They were like, oh shit, But yeah, so it's just different. But for us, really, it's a fresher breath air.
Right.
It's a fresher breath air. It's a nice, warm, welcoming hug. That's what it is for us.
Right.
And so we are really grateful. We're really meeting so many amazing people. Like Iris over here has connected us with you, and giving us this opportunity to share a little bit about what we do. We're just so grateful. I mean, so many positive things have already happened. I'm judging this film festival. I was watching films right up in the moment that I had to catch the train to come out here.
Oh, wow.
And I stayed up till 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., however long after I was cleaning up, to watch a couple more because I want to honor these filmmakers that are trying to get their work out there, their stories out there, and they're really important and positive stories too, because this film festival is all about making the world a better place. Then I'm doing a panel this weekend. I'm on one of their panels for the industry. I was very flattered and honored to do that too. So you make time in your schedule to do these things because I'm all about helping the next generation up too.
That's great. Yeah.
Because you never know who's going to be on the other side of the table. You never know who's going to be hiring you.
Exactly. Because sometimes you see the intern all of a sudden becomes the CEO. And like, hey, how are you?
Be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
Be nice to everybody.
Exactly. I'll tell people, be kind, be nice, be respectful, and be punctual. That's one thing that I think our Gen Zers need to work a little bit more on is that punctuality is very important. Showing up is 90%. I mean, we were going to a restaurant the other day in LA, and we had to wait. We had a reservation, and we had to wait something like 30, I don't know how many minutes, and the guys behind us, they were like, well, we've been waiting for over an hour, and we got here before you guys, and it was maybe 15 minutes earlier than us. And then I turned around to the hostess and said, well, what's going on there? We can't get people to show up for work. And then we even call out.
Wow.
They don't even bother to call in to say, hey, my car broke down, or whatever excuse, right? Or I'm sick, or I got the flu, whatever it is. But they so then they're stuck. They're like, oh, and then they can't, they can't serve as many tables. So that's been a thing that I've been hearing a lot. And I'm talking really nice. I'm not just talking, whatever type of restaurants.
Right, yeah.
And you go out for your anniversary. You want to have a nice service, and it's unfortunate that folks are struggling who are running a business themselves. The restaurant restaurant business is not easy.
Yeah,
Trust me,
it's
I know
tough.
a lot of owners. That's a slave. I literally call it a family slave business, and you never get vacations.
You work holidays, you work, right?
Yeah.
Thanksgiving,
Weekend.
every-
Oh, absolutely. But I love it when you go out and they treat you like a king and a queen. And that's what I think everyone should, when you're working hard for your money, you want to be treated nicely. And that's something in New York.
Service matters.
Yeah, the service is always, even when I go down to Miami and my own Latino friends are like, oh my God, look at these Cubans, look at and they're Cuban and Puerto Rican themselves, maybe second generation.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you and they're like, well, they're forcing us to give us a tip and they haven't even earned the tip. I'm like, well,
I always lose the waitress when I order water. It goes from all of a sudden they're like,
They look at the van and they're like,
yeah.
anything to drink? I'll have water. And then my kids will go, yeah, I'll have water too. They look at me like, but it's like, you're right. People do judge you on that stuff.
Yes, I know, because they're making their monies on the liquor,
Right.
and we know the liquor licenses, hard liquor obviously, are a lot more difficult to
But
get.
in
from
my
beer.
case, I'd rather have water, so I'll pay $10 for water.
Yes.
I'll
Get the
pay
fancy water. Get sparkling. Get
Sparkling.
sparkling.
Yeah, that's what my husband likes, a sparkling.
I'm boring.
No, that's very. I think that's very European too. It took me a minute to get used to that living in Europe. I'm like, it's burning my throat.
So how do the local artists and brands, how would they get involved with Creative Collective in New York?
Yes, well, we're easily, you can find us. The best way I always say is call my cell, text me, or you can go on our website and look at our work. It's creative-collective.us. Then our other website is nadiafilms.com. That's been around for a while. And then, of course, my email is nadia@nadiafilms.com. And my phone is the best way I always tell people, especially when you're running around and on the job, or if you're out in a shoot, 310-625-1116. I tell people, look, I'm the easiest person to get a hold of. My mom had 5 kids, bless her heart.
Wow.
And she, even when I was a single parent and working multiple jobs and traveling and all that, and she would always tell all of her friends, she'd say, look, the one daughter I know to ask for something is the busiest one, and I know I can get it done because she's busy. And so she would
Sometimes the busiest people.
she would always get what she wants, yeah.
Now, were you talking about that you're judging some films and you've been watching and reviewing all these movies, and I think that's great that you're watching the whole movie, because a lot of times judges might just watch a little portion of it and, I get it, and then they'll grade it or whatever. What are some of the things you look for in a film especially when you're critiquing it?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And interesting that you point that out too, because, I was even talking to my husband, I'm like, wow, I wonder if on Film Freeway they have a way, just like, on Frame My-O and, on all these like Simian, it used to be called Go Simian or Wire Drive, we could see how long the client had actually watched the last cut.
That's right.
And if they actually did check the supers and the fine print and all that, or their creatives or their legal department. And my husband's like, oh yeah, no, they definitely, he's like, that's just like Frame My-O, And so I think it's important. I mean, look, I'm looking for a good story above all. I think you can forgive a lot of technical things, especially when a filmmaker is starting out. But one thing I always advise student filmmakers, when they're first starting, especially when they're still in college, I'm like, look, don't cheap out on your audio. Because if I can't understand, you can be half deaf or refusing to wear a hearing aid, but if you don't have proper audio in a nice movie theater that's equipped with, adequate speakers, it's such a shame that you can't hear the actual storyline. Now,
Right.
mind you,
It
film,
can make or break it, because it
yeah,
take you out of it.
exactly, and film is a universal language, so you can sit there and watch Japanese film from back in the day, right, that's in black and white and maybe is silent, and still kind of understand the gist of the story maybe, or the love that happens between, two people, without having to actually understand the language in a way, because it is, in a sense, I always call it, it's like poetry on celluloid, when it's well done. But I also look for good cinematography. I've been fortunate to work with some, award-winning, like, folks that have been nominated even for Oscars, and ones that wanted to go from DP to then director, working specifically in commercials, like Rodrigo Prieto, Valentina Cañiga I mentioned earlier, she worked with Spike Lee too. Shout out to her, she's back in Rome, Napolitana, but she had to leave LA because she couldn't find work, and I gave her as much as I could, but And now her boyfriend, an AD, he's back in Minnesota with his folks too. So, luckily they don't have kids. I've seen people now have to send their kids to their grandparents in another state to make everything work out. I mean, this is the reality that's happening. And it's all solvable. It has solutions. So many producers out there in the Hollywood Reporter and even in, Shoot Magazine, some of the more specific advertising have given literally proposals of how we can fix these incentives to make it more affordable. But the fact of the matter is production is always been less. LA is not as production friendly as other cities, and I think New York right now is doing a lot, even upstate. And in New York, depending on who our mayor is at the time and who's running, right, our government, as it were, we give more incentives, and we're definitely producing, as far as I can tell right now, more here than we are in LA. Now, Midwest is a different story, but yeah, I think it's really important to watch the whole film if you can. I'm a type, even if the film is horrible, I'm in the movie theater, I refuse to leave out of respect, even if I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really triggering to me, because out of respect.
you know what's put into it to make it, right.
But I think, lighting, you can forgive that, right? Because it's hard to light something properly. My husband loves light, and his father was actually, he was a photographer in the war for the Navy, if you can believe that.
Wow.
And he got blown up at one point and survived that.
Wow.
And those photographers, we forget, just like press, they didn't carry any weapons. They were not allowed, even though they were officially working for the Navy, right? But they had no way of protecting themselves. So he used to shoot all the print stuff for the James Bond films. Like he did Goldfinger and all that. And he would give my husband ideas of how to, like, you had to be very economic, because back then, bulb was very expensive, especially after the war, right? And so he had to learn how to bounce and use, like, your reflections and stuff. So with one light, he could light this whole, like, the back of the person's head, the side. Like, he worked with
using reflectors and things?
Yeah, like with Liam Neeson doing some kind of hologram thing. And my husband Rob he's a big inventor too. I tell him you should charge the clients for that too, but he likes to give that away pro bono, and he gets a little kick out of it. But I always tell people lighting is very important, but audio is essential. And I know you want to show the flashy cameras and buy the best camera package, and that's all cool and all. Remember how to learn how to use it first. Get the settings right. Like, I don't want to be waiting around 3 hours because you still trying to figure out how to set the camera
right on set, make sure that,
and that can happen sometimes when they want to, it's a new toy, and I get it. There's a lot of cool toys out there, but learn how it works first before you get on set. And always I tell people, if you can do a test day, do a test day. It's so worth it. If you talk to the client and you work it out with them, like, look, we have a 5-camera setup, and we have a jib arm, and we have motion control, like, we really just want to test it out and make sure everything's working, everything's in sync. And if you especially have one shot to get something, right? Like, we were doing like a hair processing thing where it was like a relaxicizer, right? And if you keep it in for more than 20 minutes, the hair falls out. So it's like one of those blow up scenes, right? You get one chance to blow up that car, better make sure you capture it. So doing those tests works, and I also tell people safety. I'm big on safety as a producer. Sadly on that Rust shoot, we lost an incredible DP, that could have been, of course, a preventable situation. But that's also why when we handle weapons on set, we have a series of checks that have to happen, like checks and balances, right? And at the end of the day, that's also on the AD, and that AD probably also should have been, in my opinion, and the most of the industry who follows, the protocol by the book, that's another one last check. Like Angelina Jolie has never had that happen to her, right? Because she also has been doing this for a long time.
Right.
She's a pilot too. She's not going to do anything. Like, I love to fly planes myself, and we have a checklist before we get in the plane. And even if it's an old plane but it has a relatively new motor, we still got to check everything. Because someone could have left their pen up there checking the flaps by mistake. Someone could have dropped some water in there in your gasoline, your fuel tank, and then now you're all you're like literally choking up on the takeoff, right? And that's always the most critical part of flying, right, on the takeoff and landing. So again, I tell people, learn your craft real well, learn diverse other areas, like not just one department, every department. So when a gaffer comes and tells you, look, that lighting setup is going to take, because I got to get the guys over here in the grip, to help me out. So you understand, it does in fact take 3 hours or an hour and a half, or I could do it in 30 minutes, and I could even show them how to do it because I know how to set up a C-stand, I know how to, bounce, whatever.
Right.
So I tell people, learn everything, learn even catering and crafty, and how they have to carry, all the stuff from first aid and, all the other, sunblock and stuff that people forget that they're
It's
beyond the
definitely
food.
important to know your way around the set, especially if you are if you're aspiring to be a director or a producer.
Yes.
You should understand how it.
And you gain more respect that way,
Right.
too. We're talking earlier, you said, Joey, about generation that they want everything and without really having to do much. And it is true, but I always encourage them, be humble and learn nothing should be beneath you. Nothing, when I first started out, I was location interns. We shot in 21 locations in New Jersey. At one point, I think I knew New Jersey better than I knew New York, all the different counties. I'm talking, Weehawken, Bergen, Newark, all the industrial area, and we had like an insane schedule. This was when we were still shooting film. We were shooting in the summer. And why did we shoot in New Jersey? Because New Jersey gives great incentives, and it always has. Even renting cars down there is way cheaper than renting in New York State, And so we had this incredible team. It was a low budget. It was a good machine production. But one of my jobs was, when we had downtime, I was to go out in the street, wherever we were shooting, whatever neighborhood, and pick up cigarette butts. Whether they were the crew that left them and we had Maxwell coffee cans all over the place. And they had you busy all the time because they never wanted to see you standing still. And now you go on film sets and you have people just like look
on their phone.
Yeah, on their phone. Thank you. On their phones too, or if they forget to find stuff. And I would also have to do unclogging of toilets at the top of the day.
You really paid your dues.
Yeah, everyone had their burritos and their breakfast because we didn't want to have the lady owner of the house complain that, oh my God, my toilet's clogged.
There is something to leaving it better than when you found it.
Yes,
and that's
thank
what,
you.
like with the cigarette butt thing. So
Yes.
if they come back and it's cleaner than before you got there, I think that says a lot about the production. People remember that stuff.
Oh yeah, and as a former smoker myself, you remember that because you're thinking, oh, I'm not throwing this cigarette butt anywhere. I'm literally going to put it out nice and perfectly so it doesn't catch fire in that trash can that I'm about to throw it in. But you think twice about tossing your cigarette butt on the ground. But those are little lessons I tell people, and it's humbling. And I think that this future generation can take a page out of that humbling experience.
It's that work ethic too.
Yes, work ethic. That's the other thing. I feel like they really need to learn more of work, like maybe grow more of a backbone or something, or toughen up a bit more. But like I said, they can't get so easily offended because you got to grow a thick skin. And I think that's what I love about New York. And it's like, tell it to my face, And if you have an issue, just talk about it. Like I always on film sets, the moment I see there's something happening, I literally tell we step aside, take it away privately, and we hash it out right there. You got to nip that thing in the butt because it spreads real fast. And even when you're on shooting on location, like we happened with America's Family, that film did really well at the Dances with Film Festival back in 2022. We had to shoot an actual real live protest with all the LAPD everywhere. We had ICE, we had everyone, the SWAT, and this guy, the DP, was going to fly a drone. I was like, you can't fly a drone. He was coming from Mexico. I said, look, you have to have a license to do that. And he flew it without me doing at one point. He was so quick.
Guerrilla style.
Yeah, exactly, guerrilla style. And I'm like, do you know how many live... And he's like, oh, they don't even realize that we're shooting a movie. They all think that these people that we got up on the stage are actual actors. They're just activists talking, riling up the crowd. And it was true at one point. They thought that. But, it's one of those things where, you just... you want to play it safe, but you always want to have safety first, and make sure, your client is also protected, right? Because we have to also be that barrier for them too. Last thing we want is them getting sued, God forbid. So that's why I always say we're big on contracts. We're big on sorting through their legal. And if it takes 2 weeks to get through legal, well, then we just got to work that in the timetable. Even if, we get only half a week or maybe a week to turn it around and do the creative or edit it, we have to respect that because at the end of the day, that protects them too,
Right on.
So what's next for Creative Collective?
Well, we're really hoping earlier, like I said, to get more business coming in. And And, we really hope that this documentary happens with this nonprofit that helps folks recover from addiction. And, my business partner, Rob, also has some things, hopefully on the slate back in LA with a client in Orange County where he does a lot of, XR work as well, and has been doing a lot of AI work as well now. In fact, I was telling him this morning, you should submit to the Telly Awards, because I just got an email saying the deadline's December 12th, and he's like, yeah, but the price is like $250. So I was like, look, do that voiceover job that you saw.
That pays for the.
He's like, but they're going to utilize my voice forever and ever and ever. And I was like, you know what? You can do a variation of it later, okay? But it's 2,000 something, and it's worth it because then you can, But they now accept AI generative, or it's called generative AI category, so you can submit AI videos. And I think he, if I may say so, not to toot his own horn, but he does them pretty tastefully, and he's very particular about, how he does them. And sometimes you have to generate it multiple times before it does what you want. But I always tell people, don't be afraid of AI. Just use it to make you look better and to enhance what you want. And if you're talent, then get in there and negotiate. If you want 20 million, 50, ask. What's the worst that can happen? Right. They say no.
That's the thing with the industry. It's always, technology is always evolving.
Yes.
And a lot of people are afraid of AI, or they think it's going to steal jobs or this or that. But I think you have to embrace it. Because there's no choice, really.
Oh yeah.
Embrace it, because and hopefully utilize as a tool.
Yeah.
To help you create and be creative.
Yeah.
Still,
And ironically, we, without even knowing it, AI's been in existence. I was talking to someone who had a PhD from MIT the other day, Dylan. He was actually at the party last night. He's lectured at Harvard, I think, as well, and he dated some girls at Sarah Lawrence and managed to play a piano at Marshall. A super old. I was like, I didn't even get to play the piano when I was Sarah Lawrence there at Marshall Field, but he was telling me how he's like, AI's been around since the 80s, 70s. Even before then. He's like, in Asia, it was back there happening in the 50s, and I was like, gosh, she's absolutely right. Like my husband would say, I was out dabbling it 10 years ago already, because he's a little bit of a geek and nerd, and that's kind of, I have to say, attractive to me in that respect, because I'm more the humanities and the literature and the poetry and the art and all that. Film. Cinema Paradiso, is one of my favorite, Giuseppe Tornatore. But he's more of like the wired for math and science, and he was like telling me, look, I've been dabbling it for 10 years, and then Dylan tells me, it's been around. And it's true, if you look at what things that we were doing back then, even with computers.
Even like those old chess games back in the day of the Commodore 64, I guess that was a form of AI.
Yep, right? There you go. Yeah, so without even knowing it, we had it there, and it's just, they're making it, better, but I think we were always, as a company, champion hiring real people, first of all, and when we only utilize AI for illustrative purposes, like when we're doing an actual pitch, and before you do an animatic, and animatic used to cost upwards of $30,000 to $60,000, just to, produce the animatic. I used to use Cap TV in New York. They no longer exist anymore, but the clients started cutting that out of the budget, and they started having the people do it in-house at the ad agencies. So what we do now is we just have AI generate it, and it makes it easier for them to understand what they're looking at and visualize, because some clients are not visual people. They can't imagine what it would look like, or if they use such and such celebrity to represent their brand. And so we use it as a tool to enhance what we're already presenting and to get it to sell faster, but always with a disclaimer that we're not by any form or shape saying we're going to be able to do this in AI for you. We can do this with real people, hiring a real crew,
right.
And this way we put more people to work. But if you want to do a scene where you have someone jumping out of a plane and he doesn't feel comfortable, or he broke his leg the other day skiing or what have you, sure, no problem. We'll just do that one in AI and turn him around the other way. We see his gorgeous butt instead, coming off or whatever it is, right? Or if a woman is pregnant and she has to jump out of a helicopter, right? If it's an Ana de Armas, right? And he's dating Tom Cruise now, and she, all of a sudden found herself knocked up and doesn't want to do a specific scene. Hey, that's cool. Don't worry. We got you. We got AI.
Yeah, there you go.
And in the end, when you cut it all together, it's only a few seconds. Right. Then you go back to her gorgeous face and you see her, and that's her. That's really her, So I tell people, just use it. Make a hybrid thing, you got to be able to adapt easily, nowadays, I find,
Yeah, I totally agree.
So, what does success mean to you at this stage of your career, and where do you see yourself going globally, like you know, in the future?
Yeah, oh, that's so sweet. Well, I always tell people success means different things, right, to everyone, and we're all unique, amazing human beings, right, created in our own amazing, unique way. And for me, I always look at, success like, and I can be total type A and very, very demanding on myself, but I also feel like that's where I was raised, like my parents having 5 kids, my mom, being a strong Asian Filipina lady. She always wanted the best for us. She always would say, don't bring anything less than an A home, or if not, here's la chancleta, the slipper, the whatever she could get her hand on, Yeah, my family, they believed in corporal punishment, but we had military on both sides.
My grandmother's Filipino, so I know.
Oh, but so I was terrified of bringing back a B+. But, now as I've gotten older, I find myself trying to be more like my best friend will tell me, Charles's unofficial godmother, Laura Harper, and she's a set decorator. So shout out to her. She does a lot for all mankind, and she was just this whole year in Atlanta, Georgia, because she couldn't get work in LA too. So she just finally went back to LA for hopefully for Thanksgiving. But it's those things that you measure things like she helped me raise my son. And so for me, I'll eternally be grateful for her. The times that I had to leave town and I was torn and I was still maybe even breastfeeding, she'd take him and she'd raise. And this is the village that I'm talking about,
Right, yeah.
And it could have been anyone. It could have been a next door neighbor who happened to be a guy, but those folks that volunteer and are willing and offering, I think those for me, like seeing a child being raised up, by a village, right, of folks, that for me is a huge success, just as much as it is, winning an award or like the docu-series, on powerful and inspiring Asian women, the first one on Mira Chai that's won 16 awards. I never expected that, including Best Documentary and Best Female Director, Best Empowerment Film as well, which was really telling in terms of like how people feel that her story was empowering, because she wanted me to cut out so many of the really good pieces, of her struggle of going through the foster care system, not once but 5 different foster care homes when she was only just barely a teenager, I think,
tough,
13, and being abused sadly too in some of these homes, right, and even by her own father, her own Hungarian father, and so and then her mom being locked up in a hotel in South Korea for a long time because they didn't even have an insane asylum in South Korea. So those things, I tell her, those are going to help empower or inspire other filmmakers, not just women filmmakers, but anyone from any walk of life. And so when you're able to put those stories out, and it's not even about like the British cinematographer journalist I spoke to a couple of months back, he was like, yeah, it's interesting the way you interview in your documentaries, you don't want to have any part of it. You're like totally like invisible. And I'm like, yeah, because it's about them and it's about celebrating the person that you're honoring and you're trying to document, right? Because you never know how long these folks are going to live too, right? She's like 68, 69. And when I told her, I'm about to turn 50, she's like, oh, you're so young still. She's like, wait till you get my age. So those successes, she has been able to take a vacation. I say, look, if I ever get funding distribution, the first thing I'm going to send her a prepaid vacation, like one of those old-fashioned tickets where you can't go in and cash out or you can't get a refund. You really just have to get on that plane or whatever it is, the cruise, and take off.
We have to have you come back because you were so interesting. And
thank you, Joy. Sorry, I tend to. When the company's good and the questions are amazing, and you clearly did your research, so my hat's off to you as well.
Once again, before we do leave, I just want everybody to be able to get to your website.
Yes,
so
absolutely. It's nadiafilms.com, and the other one is creative-collective.us. And you can also find us on IG, as well on Instagram, as well as Facebook, and we're even on X now. It's called no longer Twitter, and we have TikTok as well. So,
well, we'll love to have you come back. So we'll open invitation to you.
Oh, thank you, Joy. I appreciate it. This has been lovely. I really do appreciate all the time, and thank you, Iris, for connecting us as well.
Iris De Vita, nice, and Don Sill.
Yes.
Good friend of mine. And Tony Walker. You can't forget Tony Walker. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Great time.
Have a lovely evening.
That was fast, right?
Yes.
Flew.